Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the World Football Summit podcast. I'm your host, Jaime, CMO at World Football Summit. Today, we welcome another awesome female leader in football. Romaney Pinnock is the founder of Badgers Academy in South Africa, and she is crystal clear on her mission, creating a safe space for girls to play. Romaney joins us for an inspiring, wide-ranging conversation that includes the origins of Badgers and the positive impact they are creating in South Africa, the different hats she needs to wear to actually make change happen. We also discuss the state of women's football and where should investments be aimed to unlock the next level of growth. Finally, we also get to know Romaney as a leader and a changemaker, and the advice he has for aspiring female leaders of the football industry. The best thing about Romaney is that she's honest, strong, and direct. I am certain you will get a ton of value from this interview. By the way, she already has marked on her calendar that WFS Europe will take place in Sevilla on September 20th and 21st. Will you join us? Remember, we have launched a special ticket for female leaders in sports, which grants you access to exclusive workshops with other industry leaders, unique discounts, and more. If you are looking to take the next step in your sports industry career, this is your chance. Head over to www.worldfootballsummit.com. Again, that's www.worldfootballsummit.com and submit your request. And with that, enjoy this inspiring conversation with Romaney Pinnock from Badgers Academy. Well, Romaney, thank you so much for joining us on the World Football Summit podcast. I've been looking forward to welcoming you to the show ever since you participated in, both World Football Summit Europe and World Football Summit Africa. So it's great to have you here, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Romaney, before going into the conversation, which I think is going to be very interesting for people to see another side of football, can you briefly introduce yourself to the audience? And I'm curious to know, why is it that you do what you do?
Okay. Well, I don't know if I have the answer on why I do what I do, because I often ask myself, why am I doing this? But to start a bit further back, I am a management consultant, and I've grown up in South Africa, in Cape Town. And my work had nothing to do with football for many, many years. And I myself, at some point in my adulthood, decided that I wanted to learn how to play football. And there wasn't really a space for women, for adult women who were beginners like myself. I had zero experience in football because my school never offered it. It wasn't really a thing for girls when I was growing up. And in my search, I actually got quite frustrated. So I just decided to start my own football club. It wasn't a football club in a sense 5 years ago. It was more like a football gathering of adult women who wanted to learn how to play football. And everything has sort of snowballed from there. So I could never have imagined that now we are a fully fledged Football Association registered club, competing in leagues. We have a team now in the second division. I could never have imagined any of that 5 years ago. So I think it is a combination of luck and frustration and curiosity, which has led me to this point. So that is why I am doing what I do. A combination of luck, curiosity, and there's frustration in there as well with the system. So now I'm still a management consultant, and I still have a football free working life. But my side hustle has become much bigger, and it is running this women's football club in Cape Town. We are now a fully registered club. We are fully female owned. We focus only on girls and women's teams. And And it's a surprise to find ourselves here, I must say. As I say, we never imagined we'd be doing what we do.
Wow, that's a great way to start. But I'm wondering if you can share more about Badgers Academy. What is it? Why does the world need it? And I was curious to ask you this question because you can't believe everything you read on the internet. And I read that the origin of the group is actually in a WhatsApp group. Is that true?
That is true. I was watching a football game, and I was watching it with some male friends of mine, and they were all talking about the football that they themselves were going to play the next day. And it was almost like just the last thread. And I got frustrated, and I added every single woman I know in Cape Town onto a WhatsApp group. And I said, I'm starting a football club. Leave if you want to leave, stay if you want to stay, add whoever you want to add. As soon as we had 10, we booked a five-a-side court, we booked a coach, and we thought we'd just be playing five-a-side for a bit and learning five-a-side. And we ended up having that coach for a year. We ended up growing in numbers very quickly. But yes, it all started with a WhatsApp group. That was then, to answer your question of what is Badgers, we are now a football club and a non-profit specifically focused on providing football for girls and women in Cape Town, but actually using the sport as a tool for good. So I actually often say, if it wasn't football, if it was, say, basketball or rugby, that probably wouldn't matter. For me, it's the fact that it's a team sport, and we get to provide a space where girls and women are exposed to the benefits of team sport, the benefits of being part of a group that plays together, that wins together, loses together. And using that tool, using that sport as a tool, we've created a community around the sport. And it's a community, I would say, of care, a safe space, a brave space, which there aren't many such places in South Africa for girls and women. It can be very hard to grow up as a young girl for the majority of South Africans, and we can get into those dark issues later around security and safety. But the point is, there are very few safe communities where girls can flourish, and that is actually now our main purpose. We're using football, but we're creating a community where when you come here, when you step over the threshold into Badgers property, we want you to feel at home. We want you to feel like you can be whoever you are. You're going to be welcomed. You're going to feel included. And we're going to create a place where you can flourish as a young girl or a woman. So, short answer, a community. We are a community that uses football as a tool for good.
Ever since I heard about the project, it's something that I've really liked, because effectively what I liked about your mission is that you're using sport as a tool, but the mission is much larger than that, which provides it a greater level of ambition, no? And you were speaking about creating an environment, or a safe environment for girls to play. I don't know if you can share some stories or some examples, or on how you do this, very briefly, to for the audience to get a sense of the type of work that you do, because it's more than just providing an opportunity to play football.
One of the issues in South Africa, a big issue for us, is access. So, for example, getting to a football club can be quite dangerous for many girls, and getting home after dark is extremely dangerous for many of our girls. So that's my big focus at the moment. We might create the best club ever, and if girls can't get here and home safely, what's the point? So so our big focus now is transport, and you don't think you're going to be working in transport when you start working in football. You don't think you're going to be working in safety and security, in nutrition. Yes, we can talk about the sort of common knowledge around sports nutrition, but we also need to speak about a child arriving to football and being hungry. And are people eating enough? Are they healthy enough to partake in sport? So I like to look at it in a very holistic way. We want to get you here safely. We want to make sure you're fed. We want to make sure you learn about body health. Whether you're a child or an adult, a lot of us just don't know these things of like, how do I create a strong, healthy body in order to perform at the sport? And then how do we get you home safely afterwards? And also, how do we make you feel cared for, whether it's from your coach or a physio or just the general staff that you see here, just knowing that twice, 3 times, 4 times a week, you can come into this space and actually feel loved and supported. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Oh, more than enough. Because what I want the audience to understand, Romaney, here is that the length to which you're going to through Badgers. Now, football maybe call it, if you will, the common language, meaning that's kind of like what unites the girls under one community. But the scope of it is everything. And I think what's so beautiful about the project. I think it would make sense if you can share, some numbers or some form of impact that you've created so far, whatever you can share.
So before we started playing league football, we were sitting on about 150 girls and women who were playing non-competitive football with us, because that's where we started, non-competitive football. Just come and enjoy and learn the sport. We have grown very quickly in the last year. So we now have 4 teams competing at a league level. So that's an additional 150 participants. So call it 200, 250. But the sort of 11-a-side league football, we're talking about 150. We recently took everyone on a camp, actually. We decided we'd take everyone away for the weekend, all teams from the 11-year-old to the 40-year-old, to come together and sort of build friendship as well. And while I was there, I must say, it was a magical experience, just the way everyone sort of moved beyond football. They were there to like contemplate what the club could be for them, so that we, future plan what a club could be, whether you are in the under 16 team or in the top team, to know that your ideas are heard. But watching that situation, I really thought we should probably stop growing now. We've reached a nice quantity. Let's focus on quality. Let's take 150 players and make as much impact as we can on their lives. Whether that means getting a kid through school, helping with university applications, job applications, making sure you're healthy and looked after. 150 is a really nice number, I think, to work with now. And obviously, as the years pass, we'll get the youngsters will have to move up. We'll have to take in more youngsters, that sort of thing. But I'm thinking, and these are very recent thoughts just since our camp, that we should probably stop the growth now, and start focusing on really these 150 players. And that's going to have direct impact, but it's also going to have a lot of indirect impact. Families, friends, their own communities, their school lives. So that's my thinking. I often struggle with that question. If we're doing funding applications, they often say, how many lives do you impact? And they're always looking for a huge number, where I'm starting to think, hold on, let's take a manageable number and really focus on quality.
I was going to say that must have been a very tough decision, because obviously you're sacrificing quantity for quality. And again, unfortunately, society in general looks more to volume rather than the quality of the support you're giving. But at the end of the day, probably scaling too much is going to end up, impacting everyone. Because you just can't, your capacity is limited in a way. You can just reach so far, right? And I think that's, even if it's a tough decision, I think it speaks well to the mission that you guys are doing, that, hey, whoever we're helping, we're going to help as much as we can. And we're not going to limit ourselves in terms of the impact that we're going to create in people's lives. So thank you for that answer. Now, you were mentioning before a key word, which is accessibility. And in fact, in a past episode with Ariana Cristione from Next Sports, who we interviewed in our podcast, also another brilliant female leader in football as yourself, she was saying that 2022 was a year of visibility for women's football in general, but 2023 has to be the year of accessibility. What are your thoughts on this quote?
Yeah, I have, first of all, big love for Ariana. I'm glad we're speaking about her in this one as well. I think she is spot on. And I think when we speak about especially South African ecosystems within sport, accessibility is such a huge player. Like I mentioned before, you can't think about football here for girls without thinking about transport, safety and security. Just being able to access sport in school, if you are a girl in this country, can be difficult. A huge number of our schools, our government schools, if they lose budget, or if they lose budget, the first things to be cut are sports and arts. So just having access to something as simple as sport is actually very much complicated in this country. I think it's worth noting that in terms of gender-based violence, South Africa has the highest levels. It is a dangerous place to be a young girl, even an adult woman in South Africa. So accessibility for us means so much more than, hey, can I pop on a bus down to my local club? It actually means, can I get there safely and can I get home safely? Visibility, I think she's also spot on. We've been really lucky. Our women won the AFCON last year. They're definitely heroes in the system that girls can look up to and can follow in their footsteps, whether that's practically or dreaming about following in footsteps, and that visibility is definitely there and it's growing. We went to the World Cup in 2019. Our women are going again this year, and yeah, we cannot pitch that dream through visibility without really holding accessibility and implementing programs that deal with accessibility to sport.
Well, before going into my next question, I think I'm going to have to think of a podcast episode between you and Ariana, because it's going to be such an interesting conversation. Anyway, I digress. Now, I was also thinking while doing research for this conversation, I looked again at your participation in the panel during World Football Summit Africa, which, by the way, I think everybody should look at that panel, because that was just a very interesting panel to learn about the situation and the challenges of women's football in Africa. So highly recommend that. But anyway, one of the things that you were mentioning there is that, yeah, it's great to see more investment coming into the women's game because it's needed. But that it would be good if part of that investment actually trickled down to the grassroots level, because it seems that for the time being, it is the top tier who's getting the spotlight. So I was wondering if you can go deeper into that and why is it important that football industry leaders invest in, call it, the base or the foundations of the game?
this has been an interesting struggle that we've had to deal with, and obviously something new to me in this space of understanding that trickle down of funding, or at least what it should be versus what it is. I think when we talk about national football associations and the huge amount of money that does move at a top level, it can be really depressing to see little to none landing at a grassroots level. And from our experience, and most people I think working in grassroots can really attest to the fact that funding at a grassroots level can go so much further. You can really see a direct impact when you talk about funding at that lower level, at a community level. So I would love to see more of a focus from our sort of national football associations, our local football associations, a focus on making sure those funds get to where they need to get to. You know, unfortunately, you can't speak to South African politics without speaking to corruption as well. And I don't like shying away from this topic. A lot of money goes where it shouldn't go. And it really damages the clubs, the communities, the programs that are at the bottom of that pyramid. And if as a country, as a government, as an FA, we could focus on accountability, I think we'd see a lot more trickle down. You know, this is a challenge that I'm putting out there, but I'm not sure how one tackles it. It is a really big beast in many countries, in many communities. And then the other thing is sponsors. You know, a sponsor obviously enjoys putting their brand where it will be seen. Televised matches, you know, wherever there's sort of large public appearances. And it would be nice to sort of shift the mentality of sponsors to what I call the unsexy sponsorship, where your brand's not going to be seen for a while. It's not going to be on television or broadcast, but that you can really, as a corporation, an organization, feel that your donation or your input is having much more of a direct effect on organizations, on individuals. So it's a tricky question. I spend a lot of my days just going through funding applications and seeing what criteria we might tick, and it's myself and so many other organizations. You know, this is the game we have to play to prove our worth. I think that's never going to end. One has to prove one's worth, and one has to keep being worthwhile in order to get that funding. But yeah, if at an FA level we could see more accountability and more focus, especially on the youngsters. You're not going to build strong national teams who can compete at international levels without starting at the 6, 7, 8-year-olds, you know. And I think when everyone gets on board with that notion, we'll move women's football forward.
Well, thank you for that answer, because that was a very brave answer. And I think we cannot, as you said, hide away from things that are actually impacting the industry at a global level. I don't think this is something that you see only in South Africa, but it's good that people like yourself actually highlight it and bring it up, during events, conversations such as these, because that's the only way to actually get to solve them, bring them awareness. So thank you for that. And you were mentioning about sponsors getting more interested in the game and kind of have, I would say, patience, and measure the success of their partnerships through more than just financial returns, and probably looking at the impact they're creating, going back to what you were mentioning, creating quality impact, no? And effectively, you need investment to actually grow that base of the pyramid. So from your point of view, how can we get more interest drawn into the game, which would lead to more investment, whether it's from investors, purely investors themselves, or broadcasters or sponsors?
I think that it's very much started. We're seeing amazing traction with the Euros. The 29 World Cup had an amazing following. This year's World Cup, no doubt, is going to be a huge year for women's football. At an international level, when people start seeing the interest in women's football, that really helps to sort of get this wheel turning. At a local level, like I said, our ladies won the AFCON. That energy was really felt across the country, whether you're interested in football or not. And I think sponsors can feel that, and hopefully we just keep that wave going, this constant high quality football being played at an international level, or just at the highest standard that we can look to as a pinnacle. We can look to it as something to aim for, but that growing interest really trickles down to youngsters, to families, to school. You know, if enough girls in a school are saying, "Hey, we also want to play football," schools must listen. If enough children within communities feel that it's okay for your sister to pick up the football just as much as your brother to pick it up, that early development, those touches on the ball just continue to grow. And we have a young under-16 team. We have a very young under-16 team. I think the youngest in the team is 11, just because the structures are not in place in our FA for younger age groups. And I'm seeing phenomenal talent there, because we're suddenly seeing girls who are really growing up watching the sport, playing the sport, and will very quickly outshine, I think, many of our seniors in badges. So I think we're already on the journey. I think there's amazing inspiration from the top. It's amazing inspiration on TV and on the internet, and that these youngsters are gaining an interest, just like boys have had at their fingertips for so many decades. So I'm quite confident that we really are building an interest that sponsors and funders will jump onto. It would be silly not to. I know that UEFA has put out a very strong report. I think it was last year that it came out about the financial growth prospects within women's football. And you know, the facts are there now. They can see the trends. They can see the movement of these type of investments. So we're on the right path. I think continents like Africa will often look to Europe and see that growth, that financial growth, and follow suit. And I think we will. I think we're on the journey, and I think it's going to go well.
Actually, that report, which if yeah, you're right, it came out last year. It had some interesting data. It basically was saying that the number of football fans in Europe of women's football could grow from, I think it was 150 million to like 330 million by 2033. And that actually the market value of the sport could multiply itself by 6. So definitely that's kind of like, what other reasons do brands need to actually invest in the game? No, even if they're looking in, again, just from a financial perspective, but to what we were talking about before, it's going to create much more than that. It's going to create good impact in society and across the entire ecosystem of the football industry. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up because it's an interesting report that anybody should look into. Romaney, I want to shift the topics of the conversation now a little bit because I think it's also valuable for people to learn more about your background and your profile as a leader. So Badgers is actually not the first project that you start, right? And if I'm not mistaken, and please feel free to correct me, you've been involved with projects related to education in the past, no? So what did you learn from those projects that you've applied to Badgers?
So I, in my consulting world, worked in the provincial Department of Education for 2 years on a project around improving school accountability. And within that same period, I did a project for the Department of Community Safety around anti-gangsterism strategies. Cape Town has extremely historical and deep-running violent gang problem. And I think both of those pieces of work have been quite significant for me, because the education system in South Africa is just not good enough. Literacy rates are really, really low, and we are disempowering our youth in many of these schools. And it's just not fair. You know, our constitution is beautiful and strong, and it says you have a right to an education, and it should be a quality one. And unfortunately, so many of our young people do not have access to a quality education. The dropout rates are extremely high. And in parallel, in Cape Town, you know, the opportunities to join a gang where, yes, it might be a criminal gang, but it will provide a different support structure that you might need in your life. You know, that it's a delicate balance of the support that being part of a gang can give you, you know, against actually you're involved in criminal activity. So if you just look at the sort of disempowerment of youth in South Africa, and I'm sure many other countries are facing this, and then the options that they have in front of them. If I've dropped out of school, what is my next option? Because often it's to join a gang or to be involved in criminal activity. So I think subconsciously that stuff fed into me, and maybe that's what gives me my why when I work at Badgers, that these young people deserve more. You know, I lucked out in where I was born, who I was born to. That's not fair. If we were to all uphold the Constitution, we would be a glorious country. But with such a high level of disempowerment, I think it falls into the hands of so many others within society, whether it's religious leaders, community leaders, sports leaders, to say, hey, we can offer you an alternative. If you have dropped out of school, let's see if we can get you back in. If you have dropped out and can't get back in, there are other options which are just as meaningful, and you can create a beautiful life with them. Let's keep you healthy. Let's keep you doing a sport, doing it within a safe community. So in short, the work I've done in the past, I think, gives me a sort of foundation for Badgers, and why it is so important to not just say, are you winning a trophy at Badgers, or rather to say, are you safe? Are you going to sit down next to me in my office if you arrived early and do your homework? You know, are you well fed? Are you happy? And do you feel cared for? So yeah, I guess everything happens for a reason, and maybe Badgers is a culmination of all these interesting projects I've done in the past. I'm not sure.
At the end of the day, it's funny how life ends up connecting the dots somehow, no? So yeah. And you could say sport is another form of education, really. What would you say are 3 values, or the top 3 values that you believe sports teaches, maybe not only children, but also adults, that they can apply to the real world?
So now you've given me an easy question, because we have 3 key values at Badgers, which are inclusivity, respect, and kindness. And to answer your question around, does sport give you these things? I think completely. Sport has the opportunity to give you these values and to build these values within yourself and within your community. So, you know, we focus on respecting each other. There's so many different cultures in South Africa. We have deep-rooted racial issues. We have xenophobic issues at the moment at a political level, at a community level, if we can all just learn to respect each other and be kind to each other and be inclusive, we can get rid of so many of those issues. Now, a football field is such an easy place to learn those things. Because you have to respect your teammates. You have to respect your opponent because you're respecting the laws of the game. And that comes with a way in which you play. So just to go back to our early question, using football as a tool is so easy. It's such a great tool to focus on kindness, respect, inclusivity. So yeah, I think there's so many values that we could throw in here, but we like to hang on to those three, and I think they really encompass how we would love everyone within our club and anyone who comes into contact with our club to walk away with. And like you say, child or adult, we have many, many adults. And, I think at that level, it doesn't matter what your age is. It's about treating each other with care.
I love those values, to be honest. And in fact, it reminds me of a conversation I had with another friend of yours, Paul Dreisbach. And we were actually talking about how football is we mentioned it before as well, it's a common language. It equalizes everyone. So he was actually sharing his story of how he traveled abroad. He didn't speak the local language, but when he started to play football, he just started to make friends and connections through football, because that it has that inclusive component behind it, right? So it's not only me agreeing, but you have other friends of yours agreeing to that as well, right? But as if founding a club and running Badgers was not enough, you were mentioning before you're also a consultant. So I don't know if you want to share, and please feel free to answer this or not, whichever way you want. What type of work that you do as a consultant?
In terms of my work, my background is actually cancer genetics. So I feel like I'm a great example of you're going to live a long life and you can do many, many things in it. So I started in the sciences, and I think many scientists and engineers end up being management consultants for some reason. So I went into consulting over 10 years ago, and the work I do is mostly around strategic planning and implementation. So I choose the work that I feel is not so much private corporations just looking to improve profit. I'm more attracted to work that is around long-term achievements, like this education project. The main goal there was, how do we make schools better and how do we make schools more accountable? So yeah, that's the work I do in my day job, just around, I would say, bettering organizations. Most of my clients are either local government or universities, often non-profits. So I think it's quite creative work. The nice thing is that a lot of it I do remotely. So I actually sit at Badgers and do my day job, but then can also monitor that everything's running smoothly here and what needs to be done is done. But I think what I'd like to just note here actually is that we exist. So I'm technically a volunteer in that sense. I have a day job and I'm here as a volunteer director, let's call me. And this whole machine, this Badgers machine, would not be possible without the huge number of volunteers that make it work. And this is, obviously it would be great. We were talking about financing earlier. If the money trickled down and we could pay everyone great salaries and all of that. But what I'm continuously amazed by is how many people put up their hands to give their time freely towards this kind of work. And we're not unique. There are so many organizations where people will give so many hours, and it's so beautiful. We've reached a really big size now, and I often just look out at the coaches running sessions. We've got volunteer referees who have upskilled to be referees, general game day volunteers, and you just think, wow, people want to be kind. People want to give. It's about finding the right place for all of us where we feel we can give, where we can give effectively, and where our skills are valued. So, yeah, I think I've really, in the last few years, my heart has been warmed by how many people are just so available to give time to these types of causes. The one thing I'll add is that coming from a business background, our other director is a lawyer, and our third director, she's an accountant. So we've approached this in a very different way to your average historical men's football club here that is very often just sort of coaches going through the ranks and eventually becoming chair people and whatnot. And we approach this as a business that needs to run well, run transparently, and create impact. And maybe that's what also helps to set us apart, that we have very strong day jobs. I would say both of them are leaders in their work as well, and that we can translate that into running a beautiful women's football club.
That was an awesome answer. Honestly, and I mean that, because I'm a firm believer as well in that to have a complete life, you need to do a lot of things, which is what you were mentioning before, and you have to have a lot of experiences. But I think what you were mentioning is Badgers at the end of the day seems to be, again, not because of the football element of it, but because you're helping people. It's going at the core of who you are. And I think that's what's important to think about, that behind every leader out there, there's a person who has values and who has, who's looking for a mission. And I think in that sense, it seems you found your mission. And I think that's a great example for everyone to learn from, which actually leads me to my next question, Romaney, which is, to me, people like you are change makers. You're using, in this case, football to make positive change in the world, which the world really needs. What does it take to be a change maker? And I'm asking this because I have the personal feeling that there's a lot of people out there who have what it takes to be one, but for some reason they don't take that step to actually make things happen.
I think I would not have called myself a change maker for quite some time. Maybe in the last month, just seeing our growth, I would agree with you. And maybe one doesn't know you're a change maker. Maybe it's up to the people around you to decide if you're making change or not. But in order to get where we've gotten, I think what was important was persistence. This ecosystem did not want Badgers to exist. When we first applied to join the FA, we were rejected. We were told to join a men's club. When we want simple things, simple support input from the FA, from the usual sporting ecosystem that is built by men for men, it's been really difficult. And persistence is maybe synonymous with change making. If you keep knocking on that door, someone has to open it, or, at least whisper through it and give you some sort of direction. So I think persistence, what fuels me is actually a bit of anger. This system should not be so unfair. It should not be so hard for a girl to find a football club. So if I was doing mindfulness courses, they would probably tell me to let go of that anger. But I think it has really helped me to make these shifts within the football ecosystem in South Africa. So let's maybe put it under a different name, frustration, something that a mindfulness instructor will be comfortable with. But maybe if you see the need for change and are quite committed to it at a personal level, maybe that's then what makes you a change maker. I want the sporting ecosystem in South Africa and so many countries on this continent to change. I can only do what's right in front of me, which means there's so much to do. And so many people are required, and there's some phenomenal people in the system persistently knocking on those doors and pushing at those ceilings. So yeah, I'm going to go with persistence and a bit of frustration and anger that can just fuel that change making, let me call it. And I'll add to that a team of people who tell you you're not crazy. So, it's quite a thing to have all these wonderful volunteers who are helping the system work. And, through them, I also see that I am not crazy. There is change to be made. People want it. The players want it. People in the system want it. And I think we find each other. Those who want to see a difference find each other, and we've definitely found that in Badgers. We're attracting an amazing staff of volunteers who want to see change.
In essence, you're rejecting the premise, which is another way to put your words about frustration and anger. No, you're not accepting a situation because it was the way that it was. So I think, call it what you will, but that's actually, I think, one key trait that anybody looking to make change needs to have. And now that you were talking about bringing in people along for the ride and the mission, it is true that you have a lot of support from people who actually believe in that mission, but I'm pretty sure there has been some difficult moments, and where motivation may be not as high. Is there anything that you can share in terms of advice on leading teams through those difficult moments?
In the early days, I was the sole decision maker for a lot that took place within Badgers, and some people don't like that. So I think if you find yourself in that space, you're definitely going to find people who don't like your decisions. Maybe they don't like you. Maybe they don't like the cause. And that was a struggle for me because it becomes quite personal. Those moments where someone is sort of attacking the way you make decisions or the way you run something can be very personal, because I guess I had a long-term vision which often has some short-term fallout. What really helped is, as we grew in staff, that decision-making could be shared. And I think individuals they're more likely to buy into decisions if they've been made at sort of a committee level, let's say. So it's great to now have people on board within leadership in Badgers that the vision hasn't changed, the journey hasn't changed, but it's, one can say the directors have decided this, the coaching staff have decided this, the reffing staff have decided this, and it's amazing that we have that opportunity to speak of so many people and just be seen more as a collective than individuals. So I guess it goes back to persistence. Just if you've got a vision in mind, some people don't want to see you get there, but there are a huge number of people who probably do, including those who are actually, in our case, attending the club. So persistence and just staying true to the dream, true to the vision. And then I guess the bigger your team, the more you can rest. It can be quite exhausting, especially, as I said, all of us have day jobs, so that fatigue can run one down. But I think here we're just fortunate that we sort of give each other energy because everyone's so excited about where we're going. But I can imagine that it can be extremely tiring to be pushing a dream. I mean, it was. I don't imagine it. It was. The last 5 years have been tiring, but I feel like we're in a place where we're now tired together. So we're sharing the load, which is makes everything easier.
It definitely does, and it probably has the team empowered, which is it's critical to make it or to see it succeed in the future, no? And over this time, what has been the moment that you're most proud of?
I can speak of something quite immediate. From about 3-4 p.m. it really comes to life here. So as I say, I'm just here doing my normal job, and then you start getting a buzz. People are arriving. My office is opposite the change room, so literally everyone who arrives has to sort of walk past. And I've had a few moments just stepping out in the last few evenings where our field is filled with women laughing, having a great time, playing football and learning. And those moments really make me proud. If we go back to that WhatsApp group where I had no idea what I was doing, I didn't even know how to kick a ball, to now come outside and see that it's definitely a moment of pride. And it's a moment that so many people within Badgers can be proud of as well, because like I say, we've done this together. Something that I'm also as an individual very proud of is we had to resurface our grass field recently, and I basically have become a farmer. So when I do look at the field, it was a 3-month-long process, and it was very manual because we sort of do it on a DIY budget, moving sprinklers, creating very manual watering systems, manually fertilizing. And now I look at that grass and that makes me extremely proud. But that's not as an exciting an answer as seeing hundreds of women playing football, but it is definitely something that is very close to my heart now. I have huge respects for ground staff in mega football clubs because it's an art, and I'm quite obsessed with it now.
But you know what? Those little details are what making everything worth it. It's not this grandiose thing that you've talked about. I personally find it, amazing that you're developing. I mean, through these little moments, you're developing an awesome experience for the girls and the women that are actually going to Badgers to find a safe place to play. So it's those little details that actually build up the whole experience. So personally, I think that was a great answer, and I loved it. So what's next for Badgers?
I think we need to focus on quality for a bit, make sure our ratio of support to members stays strong. We're doing amazing stuff. This year is just buzzing with energy already. And I think we really want to maintain the number that we have and make sure everyone is having an exceptional experience on and off the field and is fully supported. In the next few years, I would love to see us being a fully professional club while still focusing on grassroots football. CAF recently passed a rule that the PSL clubs need to have women's teams connected to them if they want to compete in CAF championships. They haven't put a date to that, but it's a big move. Well, it'll be a big move when they put a date to it. And, when that happens, the likes of Badgers are given a platform, a formal platform to actually push the limits of women's football in South Africa. So I would love to see a fully sustainable professional club. I would love to see players supported in this club in a way that no clubs are yet supporting their women. At a semi-professional and professional way, very few clubs in South Africa are fully supporting their players. We'd love to be that club. It's future planning. We got to get there. If we want to keep doing what we do at every level, those are the steps we have to take. Professionalizing, growing. I would love to be sending players overseas to have international experiences. But at the same time, if you join Badgers and you're really clumsy and you love every other aspect of it, but you're never going to move past the casual team, we got to keep that alive too. Because as I said, it's just the football is still the tool. The trophy isn't the tool. So let's remember where we came from. Focus on really becoming a professional club in the ecosystem and making sure everyone at all levels feels like they can be at home here and grow here.
Nice. So effectively, you're combining your mission, and you're going to stay true to your mission, but see it evolve. I hope that actually happens for you. I really wish that for you guys. So just one question from my side, Romaney, because I want to be respectful of your time. You're a female leader in football, and I think the industry needs more people like you, like Ariana, strong women that are, whether it's from a social impact point of view or a business point of view, I think the industry needs more female leaders. So do you have any advice or any words for those women that have talent, but maybe, they don't want to take that step in their career to actually take that leading position? What advice would you have?
Take it. There's some amazing statistics out there about how many women need to be around a boardroom table in order for one of those women to confidently give their opinion. I don't remember the number. If someone's interested, they can Google it. But the fact that the stats are out there, that this is a science, that we need a threshold number. So we need presence. Ariana spoke of visibility. We need women in positions where their voices can be heard. And then we need them in numbers so that they feel confident enough to voice their opinions. The science is also out there that very often women bring a different way of working to an operation, and that value needs to be nurtured. If someone who is a little bit nervous to take that step into leadership just spends a bit of time reading the science around it, the statistics in that decision making, there are even interesting facts about if you think of saying something in a public space and you hesitate, you just hold back for a second, the level of cortisol, which is your stress hormone, jumps a little bit, which means you're less likely to now say it now that you've hesitated. Just that helped me, just the knowledge that, if it's on the tip of my tongue, just say it, because in 2 seconds I'm going to be too nervous to say it. I think once we know a few of those sort of scientific cues, it really can give you a boost to sort of jump in and say, whatever, I'm saying this. Or there's body language. There is an amazing TED talk about body language and how that has an impact on your stress hormones and your confidence. So I would say go use those tools and get your voice heard a little bit. Once you start sharing your voice, sharing your opinions, sharing your input into projects or whatever you're working on, you will see that it goes well. I think the more it goes well, it's a positive feedback loop. So everyone has something to bring to the table. If you're nervous to bring it, just throw it on the first time, and you'll see it's not going to be the end of the world. And then that confidence within us as individuals and as a group, I think, can grow. I think it's important for us I thought I was strong and confident as a woman, let me say. Then I met Ariana and I was like, wow, this woman is really strong and confident as a woman. So there's always something to learn. I look to Ariana and I'm like, okay, I could be bigger and bolder. And maybe it's up to us who are in positions of power, of course, to lift others up and to bring them into these spaces and to really give them the platform to speak, to give their opinions. Because I think it's just about practice, really. Once you practice getting your voice out there, you're going to feel fine getting your voice out there. And I think you mentioned earlier being true to one's mission. We've all got something that's close to our heart. So if you're ever going to speak to that, you can't be wrong. It's your heart is driving you. So people will hear you, and you'll feel good about sharing it.
That was an awesome answer and a great way to end this conversation. I think it's advice that not only it's valid for anybody listening to this episode, honestly. So, Romaney, I want to thank you so much for your time. I think this has been a very inspiring conversation, at least on a personal level, and I'm pretty sure that the audience will find it inspiring as well and insightful. Are there any last words you want to share with the audience, or maybe you want to share where people can learn more about you or about Badgers?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I love sharing the story of Badgers. Where people can find us, they can stalk me on LinkedIn. Badgers is all I speak about. Badgers is on Instagram. It's Badgers_Academy. Our website. I like to be very transparent in all our dealings, so throw any questions at you. You can have our data. What I keep saying is we're not doing something unique. People need to be doing this all over the world, and people are doing this all over the world. So feel free to stalk us, get whatever information you want from us, and we're happy to share, and we're happy to learn. I would love if similar organizations reach out to us and share their journeys, because we still have so much to learn. We're very young. We turned 6 this year. Most of the clubs in Cape Town are turning like 120, 150 this year, and I'm sure in Europe even older. So yeah, I think I'm definitely keen to learn, keen to meet people in the industry. And obviously, I mean, it goes without saying, if you want to get involved, please reach out to us, because that's the constant struggle. Making ends meet, seeing how we can grow, seeing what partners, mission-aligned partners. You know, we want people who want what we want, which is for girls and women to feel empowered and to grow in a caring space.
Well, thank you so much, Romaney. I hope people actually do check you out. And thank you for this conversation once again. And I look forward to a second round at some point in the future, and hopefully seeing you getting closer to the mission and the vision that you explained to us before. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You too.
And there you have her, Romaney Pinnock, with a masterclass on leadership and the mindset needed to create long-lasting positive impact through sports. There were so many lessons from this conversation. Romaney values creating quality impact. She realizes that scaling too quickly will impact how much they are able to help the girls of the academy, even if the quote-unquote numbers do not look as good. Remember Badger's values or pillars: inclusivity, respect, and kindness. Those guide her course of action. When speaking about women's football, you cannot pitch the idea of visibility without giving it accessibility first. And accessibility is about getting the girls to the pitch safely. I hope you agree that Romaney is brave, honest, and direct. She is not afraid to speak her truth. She desires there was more accountability from the local institutions when speaking about the investments that are needed to help grow the women's game. And what about her advice to sponsors? They must realize that sponsorship impact goes way beyond impressions. They need to embrace the long term to see how effectively their partnerships help grow the game and create positive impact in society. Finally, 2 fantastic pieces of leadership advice from Romaney. Everyone can bring something to the table. Once you start sharing your voice, your confidence will grow, and so will the one from those around you. Make sure you stay true to your mission. And what does it take to be a change maker? Overall, it is about rejecting the premise. You need to even feel a certain point of anger with the situation you face today, and then be persistent with the mission you set out for yourself. Is there anything else that stood out for you? If so, please reach out across social media and let us know. And remember, you can subscribe and rate the podcast on the platform of your choice, and you can also share with other colleagues in the industry. Remember to follow along as we invite more amazing guests that will help us celebrate female leadership in football. Nothing else from my side. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the World Football Summit podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you next time.